Story 1. On a first date, they looked me directly in the eye and said, "I've never really been wrong about anything." The way they said it so seriously made me realize they probably wouldn't handle disagreements well. Big red flag. Story 2. We were going back and forth with asking questions, so I threw out, "Ever been arrested?" thinking he'd be surprised, say no, and we'd move on. But no. He says yes and goes on to explain what it was for. Domestic violence. Story 3. He started asking weird questions, like, "What fabric would you choose to recover a patio set?" and things like that. Turned out he was interviewing me for the role of wife. At the end of the date, he announced I checked all the requirements and we needed to plan for me to quit my job and become his girlfriend. He would pay for everything since he was the chief financial officer of a big company and he couldn't have a girlfriend or wife that worked. I needed to also find a cause to volunteer to. All of this was told with a straight face. I was speechless. I told him it was time to go and we could talk later. Then I messaged him telling him I felt no chemistry, which was true, and I didn't think a relationship would work. He insisted and continued to message me for a while, insisting I was perfect and needed to be his wife. Story 4. The first words out of a date's mouth were that she was trying to think of a gift for one of her friends from Alcoholics Anonymous. This was at a bar. I looked at the pint sitting in front of her. Oh, I just go for the stories. Apparently, I went out with a real-life Marla singer. Story 5. Once had a Tinder date inform me I had suggested her burner bar for our drinks date. A bit later, she told me that she had already chosen the names for our babies. She did this very loudly. Imagine a woman speaking loudly enough for all the bar staff to hear that I had picked the bar she takes dates to because it's close to her home, but she doesn't like it enough to be sad if something happens and she can never come back to it. And then even more loudly, getting agitated and almost yelling about what names she has picked out for her children. That one the entire bar could hear. That was one of 2 times in my life when a bartender has closed my tab before I asked. Story 6. I just want to make it clear that I want to be married by the end of the year. I move fast, so if you're not down with that, then this might not work. I was, in fact, not down with that. Story 7. Blind date. A 20-something girl shows up dressed like James Dean, with cigarettes rolled up in her shirt sleeve, talking like Marge's chain-smoking sisters. I'm not sure why I'm here. Once my boyfriend gets out of jail, he's going to divorce his wife, and we are getting married. Good luck with that. I'm out. Story 8. Had a dude tell me all about how his court-ordered anger management therapy was nonsense, and he was getting off the medications as soon as the therapy ended. To add, no, he never told me why he was ordered to go. Got kind of cagey about the whole thing, and I didn't want to push too hard since he was giving off pretty strong. Already off my medications vibes. Story 9. Every year for my birthday, my friends and I like to go into the woods and do a lot of drugs. I hope that doesn't bother you. I was like 18 and not even old enough to drink yet. This was said after he had taken my hair out of my hair clip at the table and sniffed it. Our first and only date was at Applebee's, and he brought his best friend. I had to pay for both of them. I forgot to mention that the best friend was a girl who didn't speak and just glared at me the whole time. I also had to drive both of them back to his house. Story 10. When I first tried OkCupid like 15 years ago, the woman came up to me and looked nothing like her pictures. She had a huge coat on that had for huge pockets on the front, and she said, "I would hug you, but my pockets are full of broken glass." She explained that she had to clean some up before her shift at work ended, and then she had to rush to meet me. Probably should have said something, but I was young and wanted to be polite, so we ended up seeing one of the Harry Potter movies together. It turned out she was a Potter fanatic, so after the movie, this woman laden with sharp garbage told me all about her fanfictions. Good times. Story 11. She talked me into going to the gambling boat on our first date after we had a nice dinner. She proceeded to lose 3 times what I lost in less than an hour. At the time, I was an addiction counselor and saw too many signs. I never thought about a second date, not once. Story 12. Told me, "It's so nice someone asked me out. I haven't been on a date since I got out of prison. 5 years for aggravated robbery. And she was a mean drunk." Story 13. I was on a date with a woman who was getting into a really negative spiral of conversation about how she was going to school for nursing but hated people. I somewhat desperately tried to turn things around by asking what she liked most about being a vet tech. I figured it would be an easy, mood-lifting answer about hugging furry animals. I was wrong. She told me she really liked it when she was cleaning tartar off dog canines, and it all came off in one chunk. The bar was empty, and the bartender had been quietly eavesdropping at the far end of the bar. I watched him double over and convulse with silent laughter as I fought to keep a straight face myself. Story 14. I have to disclose that I used to be a prostitute, and as a result, my butthole is inverted, sort of like a volcano, casually told to me over a calamari appetizer. Story 15. He said if I ever send nudes to a guy, just assume that all his friends are looking at them too. I said that was messed up, but he assured me every single guy does this. He knows because his friends take pity on him as the only virgin in their group and send him their girlfriend's nudes. He also started talking about the ideal lower back curve women should have. I didn't reach back out and ended up marrying a guy who was fiercely protective of my privacy. Story 16. He asked me to take off my shoes and show him my feet. I am a 5'4" female and a size 8.5. My date was around the same height as me and had small feet that he felt very self-conscious about. Story 17. I met a woman out of the blue in a park while our kids were playing. We talked for a while, then as we were leaving, she says, "I never do this, but here's my number. Let's keep in touch." I was incredibly flattered. It really made my day. We text frequently over the next few weeks and start making plans to meet up. But it's difficult as her vehicle isn't roadworthy to travel the highway, and my schedule was really hectic at the time. Texts start getting strange, then stranger. I told her about my job. I worked in an analytical lab at the time, and she begins filling me in on her fantasy that I'm her sexy scientist and she wants me to build a time machine to travel to the Middle Ages where she is working as a bar wench. She was a fairly petite woman, but in her fantasy, she is specific that she weighs 350 pounds and she has never taken a bath. And it was my job to give her her first bath. That was the last real conversation we had. Never made it to a first date, but was followed by several months of periodic ramble texts about her feelings for me and how I was wrong to stop talking with her. People are weird. Story 18. My ex-boyfriend is mentally unstable. I'm pretty sure he shot my last date in the back of the head execution style, but don't worry, the police are still looking for him. Story 19. They would love it if somebody attacked us and they could end that person legally. A bit weird, to be honest. Edit. Thanks for the upvotes. I am not dating that person, and his life, let's just say, went further into illegal territory after. Story 20. You're almost the perfect person. Just got to get you to the gym to tone you up, and then you'll be the perfect girl. He said this as a very sincere compliment. He was oblivious to why I didn't want a second date with him. Story 21. I don't really connect with people that read a lot. I feel like they are always talking about made-up nonsense instead of focusing on what's in front of them. Red flag. Story 22. It wasn't even a real first date. It was supposed to be a meetup to see if we could be friends first in real life. I met her online when Dalnet was still around. Then maybe something romantic afterwards. I literally asked her if she had to drive through the same storm that I got caught in. We were coming from opposite sides and meeting at a steak restaurant in the middle. She jumped up, screamed, "You pervert," grabbed my steak knife, and stabbed me in the left thigh. That was kind of a red flag and the birth of my own rule. Do not meet people off the internet until at least 6 months of talking online with them. I got lucky she missed the artery and that there were a couple of paramedics at the place. So yeah, major red flag on that one. She ended up getting 3 years in a psychiatric hospital for that one. Story 23. I picked her up at her house because she did not even have a license. She was 27. And she asked me to drive her to the gas station, which isn't weird. But it was so she could sell drugs to a guy. Story 24. I am now realizing that I owe all of my ex-boyfriends an apology for ever talking poorly about them. Things obviously didn't work out, but none of them were as peculiar as this. Story 25. She told me she cheated on her first husband with a woman. Later, I found out she had cheated on him even before they were married with a friend's husband, an affair she initiated. Yes, that couple was invited to the wedding. Story 26. We went to an ice cream shop, and he started to physically block me like a shepherd dog from a black man and his son who walked into the store. Story 27. I was getting points as if I was on a game show she was having inside her head. I would open a door for her and she would say aloud, "Opens the door for me, 100 points. If I didn't pull out her chair, negative 50 points. All through the night, I asked her about it. She said, "Oh, it's nothing." After I dropped her off at her car when the date ended, she got out and asked if I wanted to go on another date. I just laughed, rolled up the window, and drove off. Story 28. I talked to this girl for 1.5 weeks on Bumble, both through texts and over the phone. Finally, we decided to go on a first date on a Sunday to a little Italian restaurant. I drove 25 minutes to her house, and when she walked outside, she had a 1-week-old newborn baby with her. She said, "My mom's being totally unreasonable and won't watch my baby. Can we take him with us?" I said no, explaining that I don't have a car seat, and then I drove off. Story 29. He was super late. He spoke of his ex-girlfriend the entire time. He stated he proposed to her, but the father didn't approve. He didn't ask for her hand before the proposal, etc. She eventually broke up with him. I don't have a dad. I took it as someone else's dad vetted and declined him for me. Story 30. I asked her what she wanted to do on a first date, and she said, "Shop." She thought I was going to take her shopping and pay for it. Ah ha 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 ha. Story 31. A while ago, I dated a lawyer who told me she had been in a relationship with a married colleague while being fully aware of his marital status. They continued to work together, but the relationship ended because he decided to reconcile with his wife since they were expecting their second child. She still had feelings for him but was trying to move on. I wish she had told me that sooner, but discussions about ex-partners don't usually happen in the first few minutes of meeting someone either. She was also close friends with a guy who I knew to be quite moral and genuinely nice, so I never expected her to have done something this serious. I wished her good luck in the end and just never spoke with her again. I also avoided lawyers completely after hearing some stories she shared with me. Story 32. He told me that women are supposed to carry his children, cook, and clean for him. He only likes younger women because he believes women age terribly and he deserves to be with a beautiful woman. Once women hit a certain age, he's done with them. Story 33. If we have a long-term relationship, I expect you to be freely used by me. I don't care if you're in the mood or not. I was raised as a child. I will never be freely used by anyone. Story 34. I bet you are very passionate, so it's only fair I warn you I have herpes and will need to stop for condoms. Excuse me, I need to use the ladies' room. Story 35. Hey, the name of my last ex is really pretty, she said as she got into the car. She is not on any of my social media, and I deleted my pictures of her on my phone. To this day, I have no idea how they found out that information. I wasn't even in the same state as my ex. Story 36. I asked a guy on our first date what he would normally not do but would do for $1 million. I was thinking about things like skydiving, trying a food they've sworn off, or getting on a plane. This guy says, "Oh man, I'd probably commit an assault for that amount of money." When I didn't want a second date, he immediately asked if that comment was the reason. Yes, buddy, it was. Story 37. I have to let you know I'm going to be a little bit of a bother tonight. She said that 1 block from her house. I glanced at her and made a left turn. Then another, and finally back to her house. When we pulled up to her house, she said, "What are you doing?" Without looking at her, I said, "You said you weren't feeling well." Then I reached across her and opened her door. She got out, and as I pulled away, she swore at me. Story 38. He pointed to a lady at the bar who seemed perfectly content, reading at the bar by herself, and made a frowny face and said, "Ah, sad." He was completely making fun of her. Story 39. It was at a glamping event, and we were having so much fun until we were in the pool. Then, a couple who were strangers to us came and started chatting with us. He began telling them all the things I had told him about myself. Story 40. She was a preacher's daughter, and I picked her up to go to dinner. I've never dated someone outside my church, but I think God sent me to you to save you from going to hell. Story 41. She told me she didn't like sunny days with clear blue skies because she was a witch in a past life, and she was burned at the stake on a cloudless sunny day. Story 42. When he picked me up, he asked what I wanted to do. I said, "You asked me out to dinner, so probably that." He replied, "I already ate." I ended up marrying him. We had 4 children and things continued to show red flags, but I was the center of his attention. Until I wasn't. After 20 years together and 15 of them married, I stumbled upon a book by author Patricia Evans about domestic abuse and divorced. Story 43. She told me that she could flirt with any guy in this bar if she wanted to, and explicitly said that any man who doesn't pay for the entire date doesn't deserve another date. She definitely didn't need to worry about there being another date regardless. Story 44. On the ride to the restaurant, she showed me her tattoo of the 21 pilots' faces and told me they are all her hall passes, so come to terms with that now, please.